Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Polish and Poise conversation. I'm Kimberly Pope with the Pope Institute. I'll be hosting today's conversation. So we're going to talk about the ultimate boss move for entrepreneurs, and that's getting commercial property. So we're going to talk about, property where you just renting something small all the way to buying multiple properties. Okay, multiple. Yes, we're going to share that story as well. I'm not there yet, but we've got a guest who is. But I recently teamed up with my photographer, Cara-Lynn Birts of Cara-Lynn Birts Photography, which should not be a stranger to any of you who follow the Pope Institute. And so she already had a studio. She's going to talk about that experience as well. But we decided to team up, kind of get a bigger space together. She wanted to kind of do more for her clientele. I was thinking of doing some things for my clientele with my branding services. And together we found a space, which is where we are shooting from today, called Lux Life Studio. And it was an interesting journey to get to this point. It still is interesting, still is. That might come up in today's conversation. But in going through that, we were talking about kind of the challenges that we encountered. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to, hey, what about let's have this conversation with other entrepreneurs who have made that move before we did and kind of just share their story. Because what I've seen is that we've always seen seminars and workshops on first-time home buyers and things like that, but rarely do you see anything regarding commercial space, whether you're a first-time leaser, first-time buyer, things like that. And then particularly, especially in our community, when you're talking about small businesses, minority owners, things like that. And so I thought this would be a good idea that we have another Polish and Poise chat around this topic. So that way, those of you who are watching, maybe you're thinking about maybe making the move, maybe you haven't thought about making the move, but hopefully you'll find something that will be useful in today's conversation. So with that, I want to kick it over to our guests. They're going to introduce themselves. They're going to talk about their line of work, their industry, and what type of property they have. So I'm going to start with you first, Cydny, and then Lakeitha, if you can come in. Just again, give us an introduction. What type of business or businesses, because, we talk about Cydny now, she always has multiple. So what type of businesses are you in? And, what type of property do you have? And, how it's related to your business?
All right. Thank you, Kimberly, so much. I am Cydny, everyone. I am a teacher by day, and I guess you could call me a serial entrepreneur. Do I fall in that category? So let's see. I'll start with, I own the Virginia Black Lifestyle magazine. And with the magazine, I have co-working space with Gather, centrally based in Richmond, but there are also 3 other locations in the Tidewater area. And the Neville Empowerment Network, Inc., which I'm glad I brought this because it's cold in here. I haven't been in this space that I secured in December. In like a week, and I am impressed by the changes that are taking place every day in here, including my beautiful white countertop here. So this is up the street from my home, and when I tell you I'm excited to think about purchasing a scooter or something with 2 wheels, driving around the corner from my house, this 0.5 miles to this beautiful location. So that's all I'll say for right now.
Okay, thanks. Lakeitha? You're me? Okay.
Yeah. So my name is Ketha Prioleau. I am retired military. I was in the military for 24 years. And throughout the latter part of that journey, I started getting into business with my husband. So he initially wanted to open a spa. We opened a Fredericksburg spa in Fredericksburg, located inside the Walmart, where I went to aesthetics school. So that whole journey led me to become a master aesthetics instructor. So that's what I do part-time. I still work for the government during the day, but I'm an esthetician by night. So I currently own 2 locations. Well, me and my husband, we own 2 locations. One is a commercial property located in what's considered a medical condo type of neighborhood. And the other one is a mixed use property. So the bottom stairs of it is 700 square feet of commercial property. And then there's about 2,500 feet of residential property as well. So that's kind of where we are. And we're still looking to acquire a few more properties too.
See, this is what I'm talking about, because, we have, so in talking about our space, we have 805 square feet that we are leasing. And Carol, I don't know if you want to talk about it.
So we are in,
I'll talk about it.
we are in a commercial building. It's more of an office building, and we are on the second floor, suite 200C to be exact. It's a nice amount of space for what we need to do. As she said, it's 800 square feet. We're in a great location because we're right off of 95, but we're close to the Mixing Bowl intersection. So if you're just coming off the highway, it's easy to get here. We have a lot of window light, a lot of windows. It's a great location for people to get to conveniently with plenty of parking, which is a big deal and a plus in this area. So.
Okay, so let's start with Cydny. Let's start with the question first of what made you decide to, and then it's fill in the blank, whether what made you decide to lease space or what made you decide to buy, versus leasing. And so Cydny, you mentioned early in your introduction that you have a small space that you rent with Gather. And as you mentioned, Gather is a place like, we work. If everyone knows that's the we work story, hopefully Gather won't go down that same road, but we work, Brickyard, those types of things. Gather, she has a small office that she has a co-working space there, but also she has where she's shooting from now, her space, her larger space. And so what made you decide first the idea of I'm going to branch out from just working from home and even get the Gather space? Because there have been times, at me working from home, sometimes I've thought about it'd be nice to have just a dedicated office. I mean, you think about kind of setting up one of your spare bedrooms to do that, but then that can kind of be distracting. And, you think about, well, what if I want people to come in from the public? Do I really want them to come into my home? So if you can kind of just tell us what made you decide, number one, to get the Gather space, and then what made you decide to get the space you are shooting from today?
Okay, well, I will have to answer that question in like a part A, B, and I'll start with because I'm, serial entrepreneur here. So I would go back 2 years ago. I used to organize the Prince William County Minority Business Network under the umbrella of the Neville Empowerment Network. And Neville Empowerment Network is all about education. Everything I do is really about education. And so my why is because even as an introvert, the nature of the work, of my purpose-driven work, involves dealing and contacting with people. And so rather back in the day, if I were doing a grant writing workshop or any kind of literacy, I do family literacy activities. I'm also a facilitator for co-parenting seminars by the courts. Those involve people. I don't want them in my home. I love them, but we got to use other spaces. So it was always a hassle finding space. So I want to say it was back in around 2014, maybe 2015, when I learned about Gather in Richmond. I love driving to Richmond. I would have been in Richmond this weekend had we not had the snow, the weather incident yesterday. But having space, I tried it out in the summer, and it was great. But at that time, I was looking for something for Neville Empowerment Network. So when I launched the Virginia Black Lifestyle magazine, I figured I need spaces where I could have beautiful conference rooms and access to space if I'm driving in Tidewater to lay over and get some work done. And so the co-working space was the perfect answer. And so Virginia Black Lifestyle magazine has had co-working space with Gather for, I think we're going on 3 years in a couple of months now. And it's worked wonderfully, even during the pandemic, just as a co-working space. So I'll say for Neville Empowerment Network, what I really have always wanted was this Joy of Literacy Learning Center, almost like your Sylvans, but all from my brain. What I want to do to provide individualized action plans for students, to have a home to offer those court-mandated co-parenting courses. If I want to do adult education courses, grant writing, so be it. I needed a space for that. And that needs to be closer to my home down the street. So I had been looking for space for this learning center for years. And I got tired, and I actually decided I was going to stop. And then as God would have it, I was driving home the last week of December before winter break. And I saw a sign on this historic building. This is actually a historic building. It was the first gas station in the town of Dumfries. And it's called RF Waters. And I'm gonna have a photo of that in this building. It used to be Bell Framing. It looks like, I can send you pictures, Kimberly, if you want to include that in your final edits. But it has land. I have a field out back. It has its own parking lot. It's a little over 1,000 square feet. It's perfect for what I want to do. Not to mention the beautiful porch space that has the swing out front. It's quaint. It's quiet here. And honestly, I can say, after looking for years, this is the best space I could ever have found, or that God could have placed in my lap, because that's really what happened.
Right.
I stopped. And when I tell you, when I finally made contact with the owners, they had already heard about me and wanted to hear from me. So it was just a matter of us setting up a time the following week to come meet and have me sign a lease. So there are a lot of renovations. Well, not really renovations, but it was a framing center. So you'll see this thing on the wall. It looks like carpet, but it's something that was placed on the wall to protect it from the framing. And I figured we keep some of that here. I love nostalgia, so I wanted to keep some of those historical aspects to the space. But I hope that explains my why, especially working with youth, core tutoring for grades 3 through 8, and having the field out back. Jesus worked it out. You hear me?
Okay. I mean, but that's interesting, because you said you finally stopped looking, and then it was, basically God placed it right there, so you couldn't miss it. And I think sometimes, whether, no matter what's going on in life, that's kind of, you hear that story from time to time of, I've been searching, I've been looking, and I decided to stop. And you had to sort of let it happen, because you may have been directing your energies in the wrong direction. And so I think that's awesome that, the way it happened for you. So Lakitha, how did you get into buying, deciding to buy a property, let alone two?
So initially I had an at-home business for a couple of years, and it just got to a point where I could not offer my clients the experience I wanted, whether my husband was yelling at upstairs at the game, or they were playing with the dog, or my mom was coming down and offering cookies during, my birthday taxes. So even though it was very hospitable, and I just really wanted to provide a more intimate, private setting. I did have a separate entrance, but I know what you're talking about, Cydny, when you having people come into your home. So my mom was letting people through the front door. She's like, come on in, I made breakfast. I was like, Mom, they're clients, they don't get lunch. I had one, she was like, so what's for lunch? And I was like, Mom, what's for lunch today? I just really wanted to be able to separate that, my home life and my workspace. So I started to plant the seed in my husband's ear, saying, hey, I want to, get some property. I want to build. And he sold me everything. We could put money into renovating it. And I'm just like, wow. But March is going to come. March Madness is going to be here. Football season is going to be here. And I wanted to transition out of that. So we got with our realtor that we've had for a long time, Deborah McElroy, Century 21 Realty. Been amazing. And she helped us find this commercial property. So in addition to being an educator within the aesthetics industry, I wanted to provide training and also classes and have a school. So I couldn't do that from home. So I was able to secure about 1,225 square feet of office space that includes 3 suites. And then we have like a mini ensuite of like a kitchen and things of that nature, reception area. And we just started kind of converting it and turning it into Esthetics by Elle. So, one of my favorite things is Paris.
Oh my God, she would slide that in there. So Lakitha, for those who don't know, has this thing about the Eiffel Tower. And if you go to her location, you'll find that on the walls. You'll find the trinkets, and we recently did a brand shoot there.
She's very consistent,
and
I like it.
Consistent. And between Lakitha and Cara-Lynn, they have this thing about rubbing it in my face because I would not allow it in the brand shots. So, but yeah, thank you. But why why deciding to buy versus lease first? I mean, you made the decision to go from home straight out to just buying.
So me and my husband did Dave Ramsey financial piece,
Okay.
and he did it just in time. So we got this attitude, like, why are we giving our money away? You know, when we start looking at wealth and where our money is going, there's no reason why we, as a Black community, a Black couple, we were thinking, well, we should own some stuff too.
Yeah.
So that's where we were really deliberate in our financial planning. And I said, I want to buy something. I don't want to rent anything. I did the math and I realized if I can give you $1,300 a month, then, that's almost $15,000 a year. I'll suck that up, save it, and put that down on some commercial property. And that's what we did.
Okay.
So we found something that was within our budget. Didn't need anything big for what we were trying to do initially. Found something within our budget, didn't require a lot of renovation, mainly painting and, some aesthetics with the floors and things. And, just tried to make a business out of it.
Okay.
So that was the first one. You want me to talk about the mixed use one too?
Yeah. So why did you even decide to get a second one? I mean, you got the first one, and then, I'm still trying to get used to the idea of having something, and you was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy 2 properties. So what made you decide to get a second one?
Sister locks. So I like to dib and dabble in a lot of things. I was retired. I had an opportunity to start taking training, doing the things, that I kind of wanted to do. So I said, I couldn't get a sister locks appointment. I said, I'm gonna go take the class. So I went and took the class, realized I didn't have the stamina nor the endurance to be a sister lock teacher. But I had a mentor, Charlotte Van Horn, who owns Locks Forever, located in Woodbridge. It's off of Prince William Parkway and Ely Road. And she also has some other things that she does from a venture capitalist perspective. But I said, if you ever decide to sell this property, I would like to have first right of refusal. So I did my first hedge. She helped me, mentor me all through that process. And she says, you know what, Lakeitha, I think I'm moving. I said, how much you want?
We're ready.
So she gave me her price. I think, and I don't, people don't like to talk about money, but it was like $500K. I was calling 560 maybe. I was calling my husband. I was like, we got 560. He's like, no. And I said, can we find it? Right. And he was like, we can find it. What you looking at? And I said, this is what I'm looking at. Right. So I brought him into the process, and it was an opportunity that God had presented for us, and we took advantage of it. And now we can do something else with that space over there. And it's about 700 square feet that's currently laid out as a salon.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So, I mean, that's baller status right there. You said, name your price. She named her price. You made a phone call and said, can we find that money? Can we find it?
But, honestly, it was really about the relationship that we had, because, the way the market is now, people are outbidding for homes that are not even worth paying for them. So initially she had given me the price, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go, see if we get pre-approved. And then she's like, well, I kind of want to list it. And I said, hey sis, do what's best for you. I mean, I'm not in a position, we're not in a position to competitively bid for this property. So if that's what you want to do, I'm grateful either way. But she prayed on it, and we were the only ones that had a pre-approval letter out of all of those that say, oh, we gonna get it, we gonna get it, call us. So I probably had that letter by lunchtime.
Wow.
Right? So,
Wow.
And prayerfully she was able to give it to us, and we're gonna keep it in the community. So
Awesome.
Excellent.
So it's like similar to Cydny's story, where Cydny was like, screw it. And then it fell right there in her lap. And you told Charlotte a long time ago, just whenever you decide to do that, just let me know. And then she makes the call to you, lets you know. And yet you were the only ones that were able to really kind of get that offer together to be able to follow through.
You're prepared.
And you were prepared, and God saw fit that everyone else couldn't get their ducks in a row. And, it happened for you as well. So I think that's awesome. Just listening to the stories from both of you. I mean, that gives me hope, because, we said, you know what, we're going to try this thing out for
22 months.
Yeah, we got 22 months left. So not that we counting.
I'm telling
I was like, I got 700 square feet.
I know.
I need.
So because it's really like when we came together, answering the question of why did we decide to do this?
Yeah.
Cara-Lynn was looking for a space.
And I was under the crunch. I was in a crunch.
Because you were like in a 6-month renewal type
Yeah.
lease. And you had been there for like, what, a year?
A year.
So, yeah. But before we even get into like with us, why did you get that space instead of just kind of doing your thing as the traveling photographer?
I wasn't the traveling photographer. I was set up in my living room.
That's right, you were, because I came to your house.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I thought we did in the basement, but no, I guess the living room.
No, it was the living room. It was set up in the living room. So when you walked in the house, the equipment was in the basement, but the paper poles and everything, the paper stayed up in the living room on the other side of the dining room table. Mm-hmm. And it became cumbersome okay, I got to move the couch to the wall. I got to make sure that my husband is occupied, so he's not coming down during the shoot. And I need to clear it with him because he might have wanted to watch something on the big TV, but you can't use it today because I'm in there. And then it became a matter of, with COVID hitting, not wanting strangers in my house. Because you can tell people what your boundaries are when they come in your house, but somebody's always going to go outside that boundary. Hey, don't go upstairs to the bathroom. You weren't told to go there. Don't go to the basement. You're not allowed to go in the basement. You're on this floor and the bathroom's right there. So you're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with in your regular living space to try to make it presentable when you're not actually working. So I had been looking for a while, and I ran across my previous space on Craigslist of all places. And I was very surprised because when you see stuff like an artist, it was advertised for artists. So there are textile artists, there are photographers, there are painters, they're all in this one building. So when I saw the space and I saw the price, I was like, wait, what's the catch? And I sent an email and called immediately. And so the lady was like, yeah, well, you can come see the space. Cool. And I saw the space and I said, well, say less. I'm about to move some things around like you, Lakitha. I was ready. So when she said, are you ready to rent? Yeah, when can we start? So that happened beginning of January of last year. And I moved in at the end of January last year, and I stayed for a year. Yeah, so it all kind of came together. And it came together, I guess, because I had been praying for a space. And so when the ad came up in Craigslist and I responded, and the studio manager, Sarah, she responded very quickly, like within 10 minutes. And I'm like, wait. So you responded quickly. This is meant to be. I said, I'll be over tomorrow. I'm going to come on my lunch break. So I went to my lunch break, and that's how the old space happened. Okay. All right. So I needed more space. My old space was 204 square feet. It was beautiful, a beautiful room, but with my stuff, it turned into a beautiful hallway. The plus was that the ceilings were high, which is what I need. I'm learning to work with this, and I've been successful so far. But it was very, very tiny. And it was a turnoff for my customers because there were 39 steps, 39 steep steps in a building that was built in DC in 1904. So
I'm just going to say it hurt me to go there every time. And we made magic in that studio.
Yeah, but if you go out, you're on your own getting back in. I'm going to talk to the kids because I wasn't going back down 39 flights of steps.
And anytime we got together to do shoots, and Lakitha, you saw a taste of it, we come with lots of stuff. Because we're staging, we're setting up stuff.
We're doing
she's
things.
already has a lot of stuff. I'm bringing tons of more stuff.
We're doing things.
We're doing things.
Yeah.
And to get all of that up, we even took my purple chair up 39 stairs, and got it down.
Yes.
And those are the photos that everyone loves, though. Like I said, we did magic.
I know.
It was
a lot.
It was a lot.
We made it work.
And every time I would do a shoot with her, I would tease her. I was like, we're doing it on Saturday because I need Sunday to recuperate. Because it was recuperating from the stairs and the lugging of the stuff and everything. So I can tell you, as one of her clients. You know, it was a bit much. It was. So, but when she was talking about looking for a space in December, and I was already thinking about I want a branding studio because I saw like it's this concept now that's becoming more popular. And with me offering branding services, like an agency model, I still want to do more, you know, with having workshops and things like that. So I wanted a space that, you know, proof of concept, you know, try it out for a year or two. If it works, it works. If not, then okay, you tried. At least you know, you made the attempt. And because I'm looking at it as I'm trying to leave nothing on the table in this lifetime. Okay. So I'm going for it. And I knew she was looking. And so I pitched it to her and she's like, you want to get a space with me? And I was like,
We have history.
I mean, you know, I was like, dude, you know, I mean, we've known each other for like
25,
26,
between 25 and 27 years.
Okay,
27.
We're gonna go with
27
years.
27 years.
Yeah.
Going back to in the same dorm, everything before even sorority life became a thing between us. Same dorm,
I had straight
same,
hair.
yeah, same major.
It's been a long
We had the
time.
same major, everything.
Yeah.
So it was nowhere she went that I wasn't there. She was a year ahead of me.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, why not? I mean, we're already doing work together. Maybe we can do more of it. And so we went on this, we started this journey of trying to hurry up because at the time when I pitched it to her, she had to
Either
really make a
sign another
decision.
6-month lease.
Yeah.
Or move out.
And so, you know, it was a quick decision between the two of us to do it. And then it was a quick, all right, let's start looking at properties. And so that started the idea. I pitched to her mid-December because I was on my way out of town. And I came back 2 weeks later. And we already started looking at properties because she was FaceTiming me while she had already started looking. And, you know, we settled on, we had spreadsheets, you know, trying to do due diligence
It was
of
very well planned
pros
out.
and cons. And, you know, and this is starting to get into some of the things I'm going to ask you all about more of your experience, kind of like what you found when you were looking at different things. Even you, Cydny, when you said you were looking for a while and you stopped, it's kind of what were you coming up against? But, you know, at least my decision of why I decided to do it was proof of concept. I wanted to do something more. And I think between the two of us, we wanted to offer more, like you heard Cara-Lynn say, we wanted to offer more to our clients.
And kind of improve the experience.
Yes.
Because I didn't really have an experience at my old space because there wasn't enough space to have an experience. You know, we did makeup in the hallway and we did pictures inside. So there was no space to really have an experience. Well, Ketha, when you said that touched a good point on what we are providing here at Lux Life Studios, because I wasn't able to provide that with my business before. I just didn't have the space to provide something where I felt like people were comfortable and I could put them in a different price point is what I want to say.
So
Leveling up.
yeah, and they pay for the experience, right?
Yes.
Everyone is all about the experience, how you
Yes.
make them feel when they come in, the aesthetics, the colors, you know.
Yeah, most definitely.
100%.
Yeah. So, you know, we signed a 2-year deal because that was the funny how I just kind of getting into the things that the two of you have come across, maybe you could share. But in our research, we were saying, okay, we're going for a year. We're going to do this thing for a year.
That's what we thought.
And people advertise, though. People were advertising 1 to 10 years.
Yeah, they would say a year. And then when you talk to the agent or the person that was leasing the place, they were like, well, we want 3 to 5.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what would you put a year out there for then? You know, and then they start saying things like, well, you know, because you're kind of asking about the ceilings and modifications, the landlord is going to want more, you know, to kind of make up for that commitment. And I'm like, are you serious right now? We're just asking permission to move a tile periodically and move it back.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? They made it sound like we were asking them to remove the entire ceiling and maybe put in a solid ceiling. But those
They're
are
trying
things,
to take advantage.
yeah.
They did
And
well.
so there were a couple places where we saw it would say 1 year available or 1 to 10 year. and you call them on it, and it was something else. And so we found this spot where they said, okay, 2 years is the minimum. We said, okay, fine, I guess it's gonna be 24 months instead of 12. So we've had some challenges, which we'll get into later, but I want to hear more from you guys. Cydny, you talked about a little bit about the construction part that you got going on, and you got a building that is historic property. How hard the idea of even, like, I can't even fathom the idea of getting a space and having to deal with construction. I mean,
It's a commitment.
the permit process just to get into this spot was just enough for me and my nerves. Okay, so which I'll talk about, because Ketha had to kind of call me and made it make sense for me. But we'll get into that in a minute. But I want to hear from you, Cydny, just the idea of taking on a historic property, let alone having construction done. What was the thought process behind that? Were you like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this? Or was there any type of fear? Did you already know what you needed to do? Or are you getting resources from elsewhere? Kind of just explain that process.
I'm going to sum it up by saying divine intervention. And honestly, I can tell you that isn't my biggest challenge, because doing all the other things that I do, the spot kind of fell in my lap, right? Literally towards the end of December. I mean, Kimberly, we had just had our conversation like a week before. At that time when we were speaking, I wasn't thinking about this. It literally fell in my lap. So with all the other things I have on my plate, I'm supposed to be going with the MBRC to Germany in May, depending what everything is looking like over there in that area at that time. I knew I wasn't going to be ready to actively do anything at a consistent basis until like June, right? So in my mind, I wanted to occupy the space in March and then set up my spring break in April, get all my furniture, everything where it needs to be, some artwork, and then have a soft opening and target a grand opening for May 1st, which is a Sunday, say that date, ladies. So for me, I would have to say there was another space I saw 2 years ago, and that was the last one. That's when I was done. In another township in Prince William County, I'll say that. And my challenge, more than just construction and changing the way something is, the interior design of it, my biggest challenge was policy. So when I keep saying I wanted to do this program, and at that time I wanted to still do the tutoring, but with everything going on with the pandemic, I thought it would have been a great idea to have kind of like, co-working space for kids, right? Bring them here during the day. I'm going to help them log on their computers. You can go home and go to work, that kind of thing. And that would be a program that would pay me quite handsomely during the day at that time 2 years ago. So the township's policy refused to see this as a tutoring facility.
Wow.
And they wanted to see it as a school, as if I were Prince William County Schools.
Oh, wow.
An elementary school, which is not what the concept is at all. So that was a bigger issue for me. And again, I go back to divine intervention here, because I was expecting, having searched literally for years, a 3 to 5 year contract. And I got 1 year renewable every year. This was the easiest thing. The owners have taken care of making the changes to the space. Everything's moving smoothly. And if I could show you pictures here, like I have some videos on TikTok showing the updates, and I'll probably make another video before I leave here today. It's been quite impressive.
The owners, if I heard clearly, I want to make sure this was clear. Not only did you get a 1 year deal, which is what we were looking for,
Right?
But the owners are taking care of all the construction for you. You ain't even putting a penny on it.
Down a deposit. Want to take? I mean, whatever they want to do with the deposit.
But I mean, oh my God.
Northern Virginia, girl. Okay, because like Northern Virginia, it's hard to find some good Southern, good-hearted people to just take care of the business. And honestly, I had started looking at space down south. I had already come, to conclusion in my mind Like I want to buy a retirement home down south. That's a whole nother discussion, a whole nother day. But I'm thinking maybe I just need to get the space set up in the Richmond area, you know, because then I could find 1-year lease options in my price point. And then just go ahead and set it up down there for when I decide to move. But again, I stopped looking.
Wow. She got
stopped.
a good deal compared to.
Man, listen, Linda, listen.
I would have given y'all a year.
Before, a week prior to this happening.
I
When
would
I
have
spoke
given
to
y'all
you,
a
I'll
year.
be clear, because we never talked about that. But when I spoke to you, this was not.
Well, keep the Cara-Lynn, stop talking. It's done now with us. It's done, okay? You ain't got to rub it in like you rubbing in the Eiffel Tower stuff with me. You ain't have to rub it in, blah, okay? She petty. She petty.
But Cydny brings up a good point when you talk about trying to code your business as to what type of business it is. Even though the county has their codes, it still appears to be very subjective depending on who's interpreting it, right? So like here, I did want to code it as a school, but the requirements that they wanted for it to be a school were just unreasonable. I had to have like 3 exits and some other things. And I'm like, but you have a realtor school like right around the corner. Same concept, right? The difference between like the salon, that's what I'm dealing with now. It is literally a salon, but they're considering it as a office, right? So we're kind of trying to work through what does that look like? That looks like architectural plans. Depending on who you go to, that could be $5,000 to $10,000, especially if you don't have them. The filing fees for the permits to go through the fact-finding process, just to see if the space could be what you're trying to make it. And I praise God for when we came in here because there was no certificate of occupancy. They did not have their architectural plans filed with the county. And when they started quoting me, I was like, 7 what? For some paper? I was like, and you know, we were fortunate enough to find, and now they're supposed to have all these things on file, keep in mind. We were fortunate enough to find the architect that did it, and he definitely blessed us because he did the other suite across the hall. So he knew what it was, but I'm just like, those fees start adding up.
They do. They do. Because
Back on that too, because even mentioning having a core tutoring program for grades 3 to 8, you got to be real careful that it doesn't sound like daycare. Because daycare, that's another ball of red tape I have no interest of getting into. The youth I serve won't be here more than like an hour and 30 minutes at a time unless it's a special workshop going on. But you know, the policies, and if you have to do like a conditional use permit, sometimes you may have to get an attorney involved just to set up your business. And you know, just like Lakeitha said, even in my situation, there was no occupancy, like a permit. I had to go get the layout. These things are supposed to be on file. And sometimes you have to go and recreate things that, you know, should already exist, especially in a historical building that has been here and been occupied for a long, long time.
Right. But I think we ran into issues trying to rent space, just trying to describe to people what we both do. Because if Kimberly called and she described the Pope Institute, and then she says, well, my business partner, oh, she does photography. They're like, but I thought that you were the Pope Institute and you gave me the offerings of the Pope Institute. She's like, no, it's a partnership. Or if I called and I told them about my business and I explained Kimberly's business and that we were doing a partnership, they would start asking all of these questions. And so what are your intended hours? How do you intend to use it? I led the conversation with that. So that's already been stated. What we're going to do, what we intend to use it for, what our hours would be. They would be non-traditional hours, except on occasion. And it's just like the different people we would talk to, it just depended on who you would talk to, what they would try to interpret it and turn it into versus what it actually is. And it's really not that difficult. You know, if once we tell you what it is and we show our website, a lot of it, what's your website? So I would always give them her website first. I'm in a transition period. It'll be done by the weekend. But I would always give them her website first. And then I say, well, I'll do photography. You can check mine out if you'd like. Because I knew she would be interfacing more. But it just like different places that we would look at, once we would describe what we were doing, it left people baffled, and then they would want to decide what they thought that we were going to use the space for, as opposed to what we were requesting to use the space for, which was
we had one place that I made an inquiry to, and the guy. So most people, because we were doing most of the properties that we looked at was through one particular website, and then there were a few others where Cara-Lynn would find something and we look into
driving around.
But I remember this one particular property, and so most people, when they respond to the standard inquiry, what I would do, I would always kind of modify so that way before I hit submit, they weren't getting the typical so-and-so just, asked about your property at XYZ location. I would modify that and say, hey, I'm looking for a space. Like, I would be very specific with regards to their properties. And people would reply back and they'd say, thanks, for, I got your email. And they would maybe, kind of expand on kind of what I said or just ask additional questions. One guy in particular, he replies to the email and he says, what kind of business do you have? So I was like, oh, this what we doing today? This how we starting off? Okay, good morning.
And goodbye.
I'm in the etiquette business.
What does that mean?
Business etiquette. Hint, hint. Something like maybe you need a class on.
No one knows what it means. It's provocative.
And, and then I explained to him the business, like Cara-Lynn was saying, and kind of what we were looking for. And I use kind regards. And anyone who knows me particularly knows that when I use kind regards in an email,
it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. It means some other things as well, fill in the blanks. But if I say kind regards, fill in the blank. And so I did that to him.
Oh, boy.
And he came back and he says, I need to talk to the landlord about this. Okay, kind regards. And so then he comes back the third time. He's like, yeah, we don't think it's going to be a fit. I was like, what? Okay. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. It's not a fit. Kind regards. So those were the things where it was so challenging with, what you all were saying, what Cara-Lynn was saying, is just the idea of when you try to talk about your intent to use the space. And there are people that, because my barber was telling me this, I was telling about the conversation that's coming up. He's like, oh, that's going to be a dope conversation. And he started telling me kind of things that he encountered with when he was looking for a space, where one particular place in Prince William County will say that he was looking to get some space and working with the realtor. Everything was good. The paperwork was lined up. The money was right. Everything was great. So he met the owner. And the owner basically said, oh, you're trying to get this for yourself. And deal fell through. And I think it's related to, maybe, I'm not going to say, but Cydny and I were having a conversation about another person who was going to be on this conversation who I wanted to have, because Cydny did an interview with her, and she shared some of the challenges she had also, as well as when you go to a space and they kind of look at you and they want to size up what your business can do. And we're thinking, if the taxes are right, the credit is right, the money is good, we're not doing anything illegal, we're not doing anything, on the more, sleazy end, like your questionable side, like what's the problem? But that was an issue. But one of the things too, you guys mentioned there was no certificate of occupancy. We had a similar issue here. We're in an office building. And of course, people don't do everything they're supposed to do, as you all have sort of mentioned. And when I reached out, well, first, before you got to that part, when we were having a conversation with the realtor as to, you need to do this. Mind you, I've been a homeowner for so long, I forgot what it's like to rent. And I had to have this come to Jesus with Lakeitha, where I went to Lakeitha's spot to kind of size it up to do her brand shoot. Then after I finished sizing it up, we sat down and I told her what we were going through. And I said, yeah, they want this insurance policy for $1 million. Like, what in the world? And she's like, Kimberly, that's standard. Okay,
Nobody
the
told us
standard to
that.
have insurance, yeah, I get that, sis, but $1 million, she's like,
So the
Kimberly,
thing
that's
with
standard.
the insurance thing is that when we viewed the current space that we're in, the realtor, he was kind of rushing through everything. So the first thing I asked him was, do we need insurance? He says, yes. I said, how much insurance do we need? Because I have a policy. He said, oh, whatever you have is fine.
Now, what she had was a
Maybe.
policy to cover her equipment,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
and he saw it too.
He saw it because he asked me to send it to him. So because we were covering the objects inside, I think, okay, that's fine. He asked me to send it to him. He said whatever we had was fine.
Mm-hmm.
We get ready to go sign the lease, and we're reading through it. This lease was all over the place. This lease was literally all over the place. The lease says $1 million insurance policy. My heart sank. I called her and I'm like, look, ain't nobody saying nothing about no $1 million insurance policy. You asked us to do this before.
Right.
So
But Lakeitha was like, Kimberly, think of it as renter's insurance. When she said that, I was like, oh,
I mean,
dang.
that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
But like we were just, my last space wasn't as formal as the current space that we're in.
But this
So-
is different when you're starting to bring people into your workplace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Liability increases.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's the main reason you even want to have it, probably if you travel or whatever, but that's the purpose of it. So when they sue you, be like, oh, I will let my insurance handle it. It's
Yeah.
like 1 million, 2 million aggregate, right?
And then we had to get individual policies because, like, when I went to get
So
the
we have
policy,
$2 million policies.
because when I talked to my insurance company, they were like, yeah, we're only insuring you and your business. And so the thing about it is, like, I understood it and we talked through it. So, if I have an event, if I didn't have my policy and God forbid somebody falls, we said, okay, Cara-Lynn, get that insurance going. Her company's gonna be like, we don't know who the Pope Institute is and what, did you have the event?
And see, I thought we could
Separate businesses.
I thought we could insure the space, but we're not. We're insuring the businesses in the space as opposed to the space itself that we're operating in jointly.
Yeah.
You
And
should
so
insure the space too.
it is, but it's you're insured
Under your business.
under your business.
That's what you
So,
want.
right.
Mhm.
And so, again, that was a learning thing. Like, okay, I had to swallow the idea of getting
We just didn't know.
insurance. Then I had to swallow that it was $1 million. Then it was like, oh, we both have to get it. Okay, and this goes back to no one really tells you these things until you go through it. And then the second thing was in that same conversation, I was like, yeah, and I said, okay, Lakeitha, I can get with that. All right, it makes sense. It clicked like a light bulb. You're right, insurance, right?
So
Duh.
you helped her talk me off the mountain, just
Right.
FYI. Because I was at the top and I was gonna be up there. I was not coming down. You could have burned all the bushes. I was not coming down off
And
that mountain.
yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And then the second thing I told you about was the permit part. And you were like, Carol, that's easy to get. But then I forgot the fact that I had a permit for the Pope Institute already. But it's different because, like you were saying, Lakeitha, it's different when you start talking about a public space.
Mhm.
Like my permit is because I'm a work from home. So I completely forgot about the fact that I had it because, once you get it that one time, it's done. That's it, unless anything substantial changes with your business. And so in talking with you, I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I do have one. And then you were like, yeah, just get it online. I said, all right, fine. Yep, let me do that. But then, like you said, the fees and everything. So I go, I look it up. I'm like, oh, $70. Okay, let me pay Fairfax County the $70 for this certificate of occupancy. And both of you, I think, had mentioned about like having plans and the permits and things that were missing. And so they asked me, they said, are you taking this space over from, and they named another business. And I was like, no, that business is not here. And I don't think they've been here for quite some time. And so whoever, they never did kind of update their end as far as saying they're no longer in the space. And if there was ever anybody else that came in after them, they never told them that they were even here. So I said, no, it's just this new business. We are moving in. And then they said, well, we need you to furnish plans. And so I furnished the floor plan that I got from the realtor and used that. And I said, here's where we're going to be in the corner. And so they said, okay. So everything went very well. Then they say, they come back and they're like, and now you need a fire marshal post-inspection. I was like, what? Wait, who knew? Okay. So, and they're like, and it's going to cost. Wait, what? If this is part of the certificate of occupancy permit, shouldn't that all be included? And they're like, oh no, we're separate entities, but you have to get both done in order to get this permit. Okay, well, how much they cost? And then you talk to the fire marshal people, they're like $39 per 15 minutes. Say what now?
I need you to run in this joint and run out.
Okay. But that's what he did. God bless him. God bless him. He came in and, you know, he was like, okay, I'm looking around. All right. Yeah, you good. Okay. And then he asked some questions later on about the manager of the building. He's like, because I think he spotted some things in the rest of the building on his way to our suite. But he's like, I need to talk to them. I said, oh, here their contact info. Here their contact info. Because I'm not about that life. I'm about being legit. So we squared that away. But that was, you know, again, I'm talking to her, and like she said, she was on the ledge about everything. And so I was like, it's good. We got to get this done. This is what we need to do. We got to handle it, square it away. But to your point, Lakeitha, it's different when you go from whether it's working from home or having something private over here to now you are opening it up to the general public. There's a whole lot more requirements that people don't really always think about or take into consideration until you're going through it and you're like, oh, well, okay, yeah. All right, yeah, that makes sense. Fine. Because I think if we had thought about that or knew about it, we could have just prepared a little bit more mentally and financially to go through all these wickets that we had to go through. Because like she mentioned earlier, she was in a tight crunch to get out of her space. She's got clients lined up. She has to start, you know, she still has to shoot. My business is a lot different where I can kind of put some things on hold and things like that. But it was just time still wasn't on our side altogether. And so we're rushing through stuff and having to figure out. So I think that was a lot. And that was, I think, kind of sums up the challenges we were up against between people trying to understand what it is we're trying to do, understand our individual businesses as well as what we're trying to do together.
But also understanding commercial real estate. Because like, so in our search, even going back prior to being in the space, and you guys probably know this, what we didn't know was triple net. So you'll see triple N. They'll give you a sweet square footage and we're like, oh, we can do that. And then we started talking to realtors and then they said triple net. Well, what's that? Add this many square footage, add this much to the price per square footage for triple net. Well, what does that cover? We might take out the trash and make sure the building is secure. Wait, so you're charging me an extra $2 to $5 per square foot, basically for common space and for trash removal. But they don't advertise that it's triple net until you actually click down to look into it. So we had no idea what that meant. You know, everything was sweet until you start getting into the nitty gritty, just things we just had no idea about in terms of commercial real estate.
Yeah, and everyone, what they offer is different. There's really like no set kind of.
Yeah.
If I advertise, you know, triple N, I might mean it one way as far as what I'm giving you. Another place might mean something different. And the other thing we ran into is where we would find spaces that people wanted to use just for storage only. And or the kicker, I think was bigger than that, was finding places where their HVAC system would be on
After 5 o'clock.
After 5 o'clock. Like, is there a way that if we have to come in after hours or on the weekends, is it going to be cold? Or, you know, like here we have individual units. So even though they turned it down, we still have also individual units in our space that kind of makes up for it. So it's no big issue. Whereas there were other places we were looking at, they didn't have those individual units. So once they turned it down, they were going to charge us, I forget how much it was, but the rate that they were going to charge us for after hours added up to being more than the rent.
Yeah, but it's not.
They try to make it cost prohibitive.
Right.
Yes.
So
But the other side of that is at least you have that coverage. So for me, I have another policy that covers all of that mechanical equipment. Because if it breaks, then you know I'm responsible for it. HVAC systems are like $10,000, $12,000, and I'm like, Lord, I be saging, praying, blessing. I told my husband, go bless that mechanical room because we don't need anything in there to break. Okay?
Right. Exactly.
But, you know, yeah, and I learned all of this from our first business. Because I was like, who need $1 million? How much is that? Who's gonna pay for it? And it does start all adding up, and it adds up really quickly. And before you know it, you're like, yep, there's our capital, it's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
Were there any additional things that you all kind of like in your journey came across that you didn't realize that you wish you knew ahead of time, or that you felt you could have prepared better for? I'll say Lakeitha.
Okay. I think for me, it would have been that research with the county, right? Because I had already purchased this property and I had already had my budget set for the construction that I wanted to do. And I was not considering $10,000 for architectural drawings to get a certificate of occupancy, right? So really understanding the history of the property, and then also holding them accountable. You should have a copy of this. So how do we remedy this, right? You know what it is because you've already certified it at some point to be some coded, you know, type of business. And really understanding the power in the negotiation and holding them accountable for that stuff, right? So just doing a little bit more research in that regard. And haste, you know, I'm in Gainesville and my clientele is amazing. But if I really would have looked at the demographic of, you know, where my clients come from, I probably could have been a little bit better centralized. But I was ready to get out, you know, tired of the dog, tired of the husband. I was like, here we're going, you know. But just keeping that in consideration when you buy it, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cydny, what about you? What were things you could have prepared better for?
Again, I started the Neville Empowerment Network like 10 years ago, and you know the story. I've been looking for a long time, so I learned through that process. I think I'll just share what may be helpful to other people, especially if you live in a township that's within a county. As you and I, Kimberly, had that conversation on social media a couple years ago.
Yep.
Just the process, even having a business with a home office, you still have to get the license at the county level too. And depending on who you talk to, they may not know these different things. They may tell you you're fine. And there are a lot of people out there who operate with, you know, just something from the SEC, you know, and they're not even doing the county level work.
Yep.
But I'll say with this space, finally having brick and mortar, it's just going through the process, being patient and prayerful, but also understanding that faith without works, you know, that whole thing, you know, was into it. So, I'd say for me, what was also helpful, I know an architect and he's done work with the town, and he said, hey, you know what? Set up a pre-application appointment. And I had a pre-application appointment, and the staff was kind, I'm on the council, sidebar, so but they're kind to everyone. And I would advise anyone tuned in, you know, see if you can have a pre-application appointment to make sure you understand what types of paperwork you have to turn in for the space. And ask any question, even if you think it's just something a little asinine, you need to ask your questions. I will say my meeting made everything so smooth. Shout out to the town of Dumfries staff. They were wonderful, they were courteous. I came in, did my form, cut my check, and now everything is in the process, and I'm just doing what I need to do at this time. Like, you know, for example, I know fire marshal, they're gonna have to come through and check everything. I need to check and see how many fire extinguishers I need. We already have 3 in here, but before I leave my space today, I need to see, are they current? If not, I'm putting it on my shopper, on my list, Amazon and Walmart. So, you know, having a lit exit sign over that exit sign, certain things like that I already know, and I'm just checking for today before I leave the space. But there was something I did want to point out, lost my train of thought there with it, but ask the questions, ask any question you need, find something that suits you, and search around. Search around. And I mean, I think for me, this is a great space because there is no tutoring center of any sort in my community, whether it be in the town or either in the district, the Potomac district in the county. So it's definitely needed, especially with the learning loss since the pandemic.
Okay, cool. Lakeitha?
Yeah, I would just say, like she said, ask questions, because us asking questions to get a better understanding gave us a project manager.
Oh,
So he was there throughout the entire process for this property, and now he's helping us with the other one.
awesome.
So we didn't have the pre-application appointment, but that's a great note, because then I can take that to the lady that's trying to get the property now.
Mhm.
And maybe that's something, because she doesn't really understand where she is in the process, but I think that would be good. But yeah, I mean, and building those relationships, right? Those are services that they're supposed to provide anyway. But I'm sure, you know, with life and getting beat up about the process and all the things that you have to do, they probably get tired and exhausted as well. But the relationships with the county and the people that are going to be approving your property and knowing them, asking questions, being open for, you know, education and learning the process has really worked well for us too. So
Cool. I know.
don't be afraid.
Yeah, and you can't be afraid. If you're gonna make a move like this, a boss move, you can't be afraid. That means you already said I'm just gonna go for it.
I'm still
The sweat will
afraid.
dry. You're gonna be sweating. You're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is a lot.
I'm still afraid.
But
I
you're
am-
doing it though. You're
You're
doing it.
but
Yes.
I
There's
think-
no but. You are doing it.
I think, you know, for me, it's been interesting because it's been, and I feel like I still haven't slowed down yet to really be able to take it all in. I feel like there's always something to do administratively. And with the people we were dealing with once we settled on this particular location, they're very interesting because they also manage the building as well. So we still kind of deal with them, just deal with different individuals now. And, you know, it's
different.
it's different. It's interesting. We're making it work.
It's gonna be great. It's very scary.
Yeah,
For
I
me.
think only once did I sort of start getting that fear. And it was right before we signed. I think it was the night before we were ready to sign. And I was like, oh, we about to do this. Oh, I'm about to do this every month.
And if she had changed her mind, you know, I would have been like Homer Simpson backing into the bushes, because it would have been like, we're back in the living room now.
But I told her, I literally
Space
told her,
down south for you.
huh?
I said, you know, I had a space down south for you.
Girl, who driving way down?
She, you know, location.
I am so particular about a driving radius. It is unreal.
Yeah.
Listen,
She didn't even have a easy pass. And I'm just
I know
like,
it's
gotta be
12.5 miles for her.
but like, you know, there were, she was also looking at other options though. And I told her, I said, dude, if something works out for you, go for it. Like, I don't need a business. I don't need a space to operate. This is just me trying something new.
well, the way I see it, yes, I was looking at other options. I actually reached out to my mentor, and I was like, hey, my partner and I are looking for a space. I think I want more space. And I was looking at my ideal space. And I don't think that's not God's plan for me to be in the ideal space right now. And so Kimberly was like, well, if you find it and it works out, cool. And then I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I've been praying to find a partner, somebody that can help me with what I actually do and somebody that I can actually work with. You've already sent the person to me. I don't know why I'm trying to make something else happen. Okay, God, I hear you. This is what it is. But if she backs out, we're good. if she backs out, I'm okay. I ain't gonna cry. You know, I'll be a little sad. So I love this. This was not my ideal space. I was trying to go for the ideal space, but I think that was more not listening to what I had prayed for. So we're in this space. She's done a great job decorating. That's not my ministry, right? Everything looks perfect. I've had 4 or 5 clients so far. They've all loved it. As you stated earlier, Lakeitha, about the experience, I was never able to offer that before. So now we're in a space where I can offer the experience. My client Thursday was like, "Oh, you did all of this for me?" Yeah, I did. I did, just for you. Charcuterie board, little wine, little champagne, some water, all set up in a nice space. And she's like, "Oh, I can sit down over here?" Yeah, nothing's going to be in your way or obstruct your view. So it was wanting to be in the ideal space, but not accepting the blessing that was right in front of me that I had prayed for. So we're here now.
Yeah.
We got 22 months.
22
left.
months left. Not that we're counting.
I'm counting, and I'm not counting to get away from her. I'm counting because we property managers are different. At my last space, we're in a digital world. I'm used to doing everything digital, and it's easier to have a trail if you do something digital. Current property management takes checks, like literally, like write it out, write down the check amount in cursive handwriting, sign your name, and give us the check. It gives me anxiety.
And I'm the type of person, I might get, I'm okay with you being old school, but I'm gonna be old school right with you. I'm gonna need a receipt. I'm gonna need a receipt. Because again, like she was saying, in a digital world, everything is automatic. You get that sort of return receipt, you get that email, or you can log in and check that it's been applied to your account, things like that. And so, yeah, we
Gives me anxiety to
When
drop something off that's hard to trace.
So what I do is when I drop it off, slide it under the door, because that's what they have. That's a whole other conversation about we sliding stuff under the door.
Literally.
And I said, I'm gonna need a receipt. And then they stand there looking at me like,
What?
"Oh, we don't have any receipts." "Well, I'm gonna need you to make a copy of the check, sign it, and slide it back under the door." And I stood right there until they did it. And I said, "This is what we gonna do every month. So we got 22 more times for me to come there, slide it under the door, so be prepared to just make the copy and sign it." Again, 22 months, but we're not counting.
We're not counting.
But
it's a great.
It's gonna go by fast.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, but what we've learned along the way. Thank you to both of you. I was funneling my questions through Kimberly to you all. So thank you for both of your help along the way, because what we've learned overall about renting commercial space, like now you can't tell me nothing. I'm coming in locked and loaded after 22 months when we look for the second spot to say, "Look, this is what we want. This is how we want it. We have this in place. We have this in place. And we're expecting this. Can you provide this for us?" "Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate you." So it's the information, because I just had no idea. I was never in any very formal agreements to go through what we're going through right now. But you guys have already done it, and we needed you along the process.
But I think
very stressful. Like,
Yes.
It's hitting you. One thing's hitting you here, and going through with my husband, I'm just like, bruh, you ain't know that? You're like, "No, I didn't know that." And I'm like, we sitting up late at night trying to do articles of incorporation and all these things. And did you pay that? What? So, figuring out the roles and who's going to handle what, because there's some, like, we don't co-parent finances. So when we do, I pay the bill and he pays it. Then I'm like, "Dude, where all the money at?" "Well, you pay my bad. I'll go back to effleuraging and, doing skin." But, just really figuring that out and just trying to establish that balance. So,
yeah, I think, especially when it comes to like the paperwork and the finances. I think if I had to tell someone anything, as far as a lesson learned, in addition to what you all have already said, I think I would also say it would be great. You don't have to. It would be great to also just have something already set aside for the things that will come up that you probably thought you prepared for, but you didn't really fully prepare for, or didn't really even think about. I mean, one, there's a lot that had to be done to just set the space up. But then kind of like when you think about the times that we're in now, we're still in a pandemic. I don't care what anybody says. And so you got to think about things to operate still in a pandemic. And so there were different decisions that had to be made as far as just what type of tables. Do you want to have big tables where we're all sitting at? Or do you want to have individual tables where everyone has their own small table and they kind of have some sort of comfort where, you don't have to worry about the whole plexiglass and things like that. Or even having a hand sanitizing station, you come in and just all those different things. And so, and like with the inspections and the occupancy permits and all that, like that was stuff we hadn't thought about, let alone having that cost, built into what you're thinking about. And then again, the insurance that came up along the way. So it's like, okay, now that's another monthly, or if you decide to do quarterly or annual, but that's just another expense we didn't think of. So my lesson learned or key takeaway I would offer people, in addition to what you already said, is try to have a little bit more if you can, if it's possible. I understand some people are looking for spaces because it's crunch time or whatever it may be. But if you can already have a cushion, that'll be great. And especially given where, like we've talked about this last hour, there are things that we all had to learn along the way. Some of us more than others. But it helps that you have a resource to tap into to learn these things. But there's going to be some things that you just, as much as you want to prepare, maybe you're not just fully prepared. And I think it would help if you have some cushion. Even the thing, oh my goodness, the security deposit. Like I said, I've been a homeowner for so long, I forgot about all that kind of stuff. And so when they were like, okay, we're going to need a security deposit. All right, how much is it? It's the same amount as your rent. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
But be lucky it's only 1 month, because sometimes with commercial property, it could be 3 months security deposit.
Wow.
Right? She just hurt my heart.
Y'all walking in favor. Yeah, because
We weren't ready for
when I
that.
asked, I'm like 3 months security deposit.
And see, we would be like, okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to have to just, we ain't ready for that. But, it's just, you had your money and, it's just, again, that would have been one more thing that we didn't expect. And so, have a little bit more already aside, whether it's to help set up or whether it's for the administrative things that come up that you need to have hard cash for real quick.
That's your capital and your cash flows.
Yeah.
It's like having a child, and it's like, oh, I got to get ready. Let me do all this and that. There's never a ready for having a child.
Right.
Yeah.
You just do it.
That's a
When
perfect.
that baby comes, you're gonna be ready to take care of it somehow, some way. Like it's gonna work out. Now, I'm not saying go in there without thinking about things and planning and all that stuff, but no matter how prepared you think you are, things happen. Just like with home ownership, I'll be celebrating 20 years this year, and there have been things that have popped up. So something's gonna pop up, just try to be prepared for it. But, something you said earlier on, Kimberly, like I'm just on go mode. I'm living and maximizing every minute of this life, looking back with no regrets. Actually, I'm trying to create fantabulous stories for my children's children to talk about great grandma Coco and what she did with her okay, so that's what it's about for me. Just be prepared, as prepared as you can. And when it comes to finance, and I guess that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, we should
but
have that.
if you get in a situation, be wise about those financial options that may be available to you. And I'll just say that.
Yeah, we may need to have a part
That's
2
another
conversation.
Yeah,
where
we definitely.
Lakeitha can probably school some folk on, on
They
that aspect. And I think it'd be great too. Also, I am going to do a part 2. Don't know when, but I do want to do a part 2 with the other 2 ladies who couldn't be here today with the conference, because I think they would have a great insight. One person, she operates a business in Maryland. Well, they both do operate in Maryland. So it'd be great to kind of get their perspective as to what's different, because all 3 of us are operating out of Virginia and both of them are operating out of Maryland. And one of them also has a spot in DC as well. I think she still has that spot in DC. And so it'd be great to get their take. And I think we could kind of segue into talking about financing options and things like that. But
something else to consider, Kimberly, just with everybody here, if I heard correctly, we all work. So when it's like talking about waiting for that time, like when you retire, it may not be that like, oh, now I'm going to do this and that. Like you can actually, I call it merging off of 95. There's that merge lane, right? So you can work a 9 to 5, and you can also be that boss in your other time, you know? So it's like, I think all of us here work a full-time job. Am I correct?
Yep.
You know,
And
I'm kind of retired.
Lakeitha retired and she's moonlighting as a contractor, I think, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
She's
it's
special.
social.
She's special.
Well,
But
I'm
yeah.
working.
Well, we work with you. We work with you, Cydny. We work. Yes.
I'm working out in these streets.
Right. We still hustling. So, but yeah, I think that'll be a great part 2 conversation. Cara-Lynn, did you have any last thing that you wanted to share? It's kind of like your biggest lesson or what you want to share with someone as to what they should think about going forward.
Oh, my biggest lesson, insurance, permits, triple N. I had no idea what any of these terms meant. Price per square footage. I had no idea how that worked. Commercial lease terms. I learned about commercial lease terms. I mean, they might give you a 1-year lease, but they're not gonna do anything for you, and it's probably gonna be at a higher rate than what's advertised because they want you in there for longevity. I learned about commercial realtors. You have to keep calling and follow up for responses to see places, and places go quickly. I mean, in the DC area. What else have I learned?
I would say look at the fine print of those leases as well.
So when before we signed our lease, we had a list of items that we sent back to the realtor that needed to be altered in the lease. Because literally we received a lease that just seemed like a canned lease statement. Just, this is the regular lease, you sign it, keep going, move on. And when we started to read the lease and question the things in the lease, Kimberly was like, no, I'm not going for that. I'm like, nah, dog, that's not even what we talked about when we saw you in the space. I'm not signing it. You 24 months, I'm not signing it. So
he wasn't ready for us because I sent back a detailed, like 2 or 3 pages long thing where I called out paragraph, section, etc., language, and then what our counter was, or either a question to him is explain this, or I said, here's what you need to put in as far as language. It took him a few.
We learned patience from that, because even with the list of questions that we sent back from the lease, we would get answers to certain ones. So then we turn around and have to send it back again to get the other questions that were being omitted answered. So I've learned the patience. I've learned about triple N. I've learned about leasing terms and lengths. This overall has been a big learning experience and a great setup for the next space that we'll get, because we'll definitely come in hot, already knowing what to prepare for, what to look out for, like even little things in this lease that somehow we missed. We would like for them to address our ladybugs. They're pretty. We don't want them in our space. But that's a term in the lease where we found out that, oh, you're responsible for talking to the ladybugs and escorting them out. But we didn't know that. I guess because it's either not mentioned in the lease or such a quick blurb, and we were in such a trying to address the other major points of the lease that we missed little small things like, hey, what if we need to get an exterminator in here to escort our ladybugs out? That's on us. You know, we're thinking we're paying rent. So I'm thinking like it's an apartment. I haven't lived in an apartment in 20 plus years. So we're thinking like it's an apartment. We snap our fingers, you come and you clean it up because we didn't pay our deposit and our rent, and it's done. Yeah, commercial spaces operate differently.
And they told us everything's included.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing where I was saying earlier about how what's included means something different for every
space.
You know, so you got to get clear on that. But it's been, I think, an awesome conversation where I've just learned some things from you all. I thought I learned a lot earlier, but I've learned even more in this conversation. And like I said, we're going to do a part 2. I want you all to just we're going to go around and kind of tell people how to find more about you or your business or businesses. Cydny, we'll start with you. How can people find you?
Can I say one other thing we kind of left out first?
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Signage is different depending on the type of space.
Oh,
Yeah.
we've had a signage conversation as well.
Oh, oh,
And being my property is located in a historic district, so I have to go to through the architectural review board
Yep.
to have the signage approved. Where if I was just a stone's throw up the street, you know, I can have a different sign. And depending on where you are, what policies are in place, you can have a lit sign or not a lit sign. You know, there are so many things with signage. So not going to have that. Save that for your part two, but I did want to throw that out there. Like,
no, it's good.
That's
Because
true.
I think my hairdresser had the same issue. She's in Alexandria, and I think she had the same issue with either her current property or previous property, where everything you said, it has to be approved, has to be a certain size, certain every single thing about her signage has to be approved.
Yeah.
And that was sort of unexpected for her as well. So that's a great point to bring up.
Mine too, being in a condo owner association has to be approved, because I had my vision for the sign. They're like, yeah, we don't have those here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, what are my options? What you see outside that looks like everybody else's.
But it looks good though. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you got that plaque looking thing out there. I was like, oh,
Very
it's official.
professional.
Mm,
Yeah.
I like
I'm
it.
taking that with me too. So.
I think for our signage, the funny thing is they said they'll provide signage. And so where our office is sort of like a suite of offices in this corner, in this wing, if you will. And so there's this door that kind of stays open, but we could close it if we want to. There's this door, and then there's the 3 offices behind the door. And they have a sign where they tell you kind of what's listed, you know, in this area. Where the other 2 spaces aren't rented out yet. And so they put a small little strip of a sign that says, you know, we're back here. We're thinking that's going to also include the sign on the door. No, we had to come up with our own sign for the door. I gave it a couple of weeks and I was like, oh, so you're not going to give us a sign for the door. That was your signage. Okay, got it. So let me get a sign for the door. Because even when the fire marshal came, he knocked very timidly and I opened the door. He was like, yeah, I wasn't sure if this is the space I was supposed to come to. Because again, there's no signage. So yeah, I mean, that's again, one of those things where you got to think about that. And depending on what type of signage you're talking about, might be a small cost or a huge cost. And just like you said, Lakeitha, everything has to be approved because you're in an association. And so that's completely different than like Cydny, what you're running up against with being in a historic district and kind of what you had to deal with. So those are all good points. But yeah, Cydny, how can people find out more about you?
Yes, thank you, Kimberly. For the magazine, you can go to www.thevablackLifestylemagazine.com and go ahead and subscribe while you're there. And you can look up VA Black Life Mag on Instagram and Twitter. We're on Facebook. I don't tweet too well, but we do have a Twitter presence. I'll put it that way. And so for the Neville Empowerment Network, Inc., it's the Neville Empowerment Network Inc.com, and we are in transition with that website. Like, you're going to see a major overhaul in the month of April, and it's also on Facebook. The Instagram, because this space is the Joy of Literacy Learning Center, it's the Joy of Lit on Instagram, and there's a VA Empower on Twitter that connects to that Facebook page. And I have a public Facebook page, which is CydnyNeville.com. And then there's the personal one where I don't accept all friend requests because I'm an introvert.
Yeah, we don't need no new friends. We don't need no new friends. Cool. Thank you. Lakeitha, how can people find you?
So my name is Ketha Prioleau. I am located in Gainesville, Virginia, 7420 Heritage Village Plaza, Suite 102. My email address is elskinconfidence@gmail.com, and you can look at my services on www.estheticsbyelle.com.
Okay.
Oh, I do have Facebook and Instagram, but it's all tied together. So, you know, Google me.
Gotcha. Cara-Lynn Birts Photography, how can they?
You can find me on my website. Like I said, it's in transition. It should be done within a couple days. Rebrand. Cara-Lynn-Birts.com. My first name is hyphenated, CARA-LYNNBIRTS.com. You can find me on Instagram, Cara-Lynn Birts Photography. I do have Facebook. I have not updated that as I should have. So I'll give Facebook a little attention sometime in the near future. You can email me at cara-lynn@cara-lynnbirts.com. Everything is my name. You should remember it because it's repeated everywhere that you see my stuff. So that's how you contact me. We are located in Lux Life Studio, 7830 Backlick Road, Suite 200C in Springfield, Virginia.
Yes, and speaking of Lux Life Studio, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn at the Lux Life Studio. That's at the Lux Life Studio. Website, you have your option of theluxlifestudio.com or just luxlifestudio.com. It'll point to the same website, depending on if you remember the or not. Want to make it easy for you. And of course, the website is luxlifestudio.com, as I mentioned. And you can also find different things about services. You can also find links to our individual web pages. So if you go to luxlifestudio.com, you'll find a link to Cara-LynnBirts.com, her photography. You'll also find a link to thepopeinstitute.com. And you'll see all the services that Lux Life Studio offers, as well as the events that we'll have coming up. Because in addition to, as I mentioned, doing things for our current clientele, we're also going to have workshops, seminars, things like that. So you can find that type of information off our website. And let's see what else. We have an open house coming up. And well, the Pope Institute, I mean, you all should have been following. If you are a new person, let me tell you real quickly about the Pope Institute. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you can find out more when we're having additional Polish and Poise conversations. These are chats for entrepreneurs, small businesses, things that we have to deal with, that we think about and go through in that space. So the first set of Polish and Poise chats, we talked about branding and design and photography and rebranding, things like that. What you should think about whether you're just starting or if you're going through a rebrand. And so now we're doing this set of conversations on just making that property move. But the Pope Institute, we provide branding services in general. So whether that's your logo design, whether it's really strategizing what type of branding do you need, what is your branding going to look like, what does it need to say, what are you trying to do, how are you trying to market yourself, your business, all of that is the coaching that I provide. So I provide the coaching for you. I also provide the services where you can get your graphic design done, and also the photography. If you need a brand shoot, I work with Cara-Lynn Birts Photography for all your brand shoots, things like that. And so we provide like an agency model of being able to make sure you have everything that you need. So it's a full suite of services. We're not going to just give, you can do a la carte if you need to, but we also provide a full suite of services because, again, why do a la carte? Because that coaching component is very important. You want to make sure you understand kind of what you're getting yourself into, understand how you've been operating. Has it been optimal the way you've been operating? Do you need to change? Because all the other little things that are flashy, they need to make sense. And it all starts with how are you trying to present yourself and your business? And that's what the Pope Institute provides, as well as the workshops on the etiquette, dining etiquette, business etiquette, because again, that goes back to the brand, whether it's your personal brand or your professional brand. That's the full suite of what the Pope Institute is able to offer you. And so you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Pope Institute. And as I mentioned, the website is thepopeinstitute.com. And so with that, I want to thank our guests, Cydny, Lakitha. Thank you for joining us for this first set of conversations about going into the property realm, bossing up and really going to the next level with that. And I've had fun in this conversation. As I mentioned, I've learned a few more things in this conversation, and we're going to have a part 2. So tune in for that. Don't know what it's going to look like, but there's going to be a part 2 conversation because as we talked about, there's lots more things we can talk about with respect to making that decision to get a property, whether it's leasing or buying. And so I hope
be a retreat at a mansion.
Oh, see, look at her. Look at her. She.
I have one. I have a couple of options.
I'm
spa
open.
days, spa services. I'm just
Okay,
saying.
so basically,
I'm open.
the part 2 conversation It's going to be potentially at a mansion where we're doing a retreat, and we're going to have this conversation talking about getting more property.
I'm open.
Yes.
So you'll definitely want to subscribe to all of our social media and our channels and things like that, so you can get information on when that goes down. And so stay tuned. But thank you all again for tuning in. I hope you've been able to learn something. As I mentioned, I've learned something in this conversation. I hope you've been able to learn a lot as well. And be sure to follow all of us on our respective channels. And hopefully we'll see you here at the Lux Life Studio in the near future. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.